Hey, this is Sky. Welcome to my YouTube channel. It's Monday, Mafia Monday. Let's jump into our story. We're going scene by scene through all three novels that I wrote about the Los Angeles Syndicate. We're starting with the first one, California Gangsters. We're following our main character, Simon Castro. He just joined the Syndicate, the Los Angeles Syndicate, a very powerful body that runs all the crime in the West Coast. And he's going around currently. We just saw him go in the last episode. You can go watch it. It's last Monday, where he went and talked to the boss of the Mexican Mafia just to get to know him. So now he is on his way to talk to the Russians, the Russian Borgata. So let's continue forward. I got Mr. Snubby, as usual, loaded and ready for some Mafia stories. Set your scene right, set your mood right. Mafia Monday. Raymond picked me up that morning in a different car, a four-door wide-bodied Mercedes with black tinted windows, all black paint and cool black rims. The interior was black leather and had a strong smell of the old lady cigars that Raymond smoked all day long. As he opened my door for me to get in, he had a big smile on his wrinkled, leathery face. He said, "What do you think of this ride, boss?" We drove off, and I replied, "Oh, I dig this car. Good choice. I bet it goes real fast. Burn some rubber. Let me see what she can do." Raymond searched the radio to find a good station for us to jam out to. He landed on Parliament Funkadelic, and we sped off to the home of one of the most feared men in the world. I liked Raymond more and more as I got to know him. I enjoyed his brand of blunt honesty that seemed to be increasingly hard to find in a fake city like Los Angeles. We headed over to Glendale and finally arrived upon a nice modern style mansion, which was painted a drab gray. The home looked like a prison to me, with high walls and slotted windows. There were various bronze statues placed around the property and a couple fountains. Raymond looked back at me through the mirror and said, "These Russians are not nearly as friendly as the Mexicans, but they're probably a lot more honest. You got to be on top of your game with these guys, Simon. Don't let your guard down. This guy is named Ivan the Terrible for a reason." The gate opened up, and a Russian man in a black suit came out of a little security station to talk to Raymond. They seemed to know each other, but were not too friendly. We parked the car as Ivan's young and pretty wife opened the front door of the house to greet us. Her dog, a golden retriever named Lance, came running happily out of the home and barking at us in the driveway. As Raymond got out of the car, he opened the door for me and then went over to talk to the dog. He said, "Hello, Lance, my boy," and gave him a pat on his head. I walked over to the entrance of the large house and shook the hand with Ivan's hot wife. She had a fake smile, but perfect teeth. She said to me in a thick Russian accent, "Ivan is in office. Please go inside. He's waiting." I strolled inside. His kids were in the living room playing a board game and making a mess of Kool-Aid and chocolate chip cookies on the white carpet. The layout of their house was pretty amazing. The living room looked more like an atrium down at City Hall, with white columns around the walls and a wildly lit up dome ceiling. As I walked down the hallway to what looked like an office door, I could hear the hot Russian wife yelling at her kids about the mess on the floor. As I got a few steps down the hallway, Ivan opened the door at the end with a smile on his fat face. He said, "Simon, it's very nice to have you in my home. This little place keeps my wife and kids happy, but it's much too small for me. I have two very large villas, one in Italy and one in Ukraine. They make this look like a studio apartment." I replied, "Oh, that's good for you. I like this home. It's nice." His office was a little small, but also very nice, with very high walls that were completely covered from head to toe in what looked like an expensive classical art painting collection of some sort. Ivan had a bronze statue of a naked woman in the corner that was pretty much life-size. Her hair was in a ponytail and her hands were out like an angel. Her ass was shiny as if it had been touched more than the rest of her body, so I went over and gave it a rub for good luck. Ivan laughed and said, "That's a very pretty statue, no? That statue cost me 70,000 US dollars. I bet that tight little ass of hers is worth 65,000 of it. My youngest son dresses her up in aprons and towels to cover her body, and I often wonder if he's a queer, a fruitcake." I replied, "Probably not. I came by to talk to you about the company, the Syndicate, to get to know you a little bit before our first official board meeting." I sat down on a leather chair next to his desk. He pulled out a bottle of vodka from the bar by the window, motioning to me if I wanted a drink. I politely waved my hand to refuse his offer, and he poured a glass for himself. As he poured, Ivan gave a frown like a child who didn't get his way, and he said, "Simon, I never trust a man who refuses to drink vodka." I replied, "Well, you're very smart not to trust me, because I'm very dangerous." He smiled and said, "Well, then how about a beer? I have many to choose from. Please, you have to drink with me." Ivan sat behind his desk and yelled at the top of his lungs in Russian into the air, "Bring beer!" Less than a minute later, a hot Russian chick dressed in a sexy outfit, like she had just stepped out of a French porno movie, came scurrying into the office holding a tray with 2 pint glasses of German beer. I had to ask Ivan, "What the hell is up with that? How do you have a 19-year-old Playboy model as a maid?" Ivan smiled and said, "Well, my wife is very lazy, and if I'm going to pay for a woman to clean my home, she has to be hot. But there's strict rules. My wife is from Ukraine, and she'll chop off my dick. That's not a joke. Ukrainian women are crazy." I laughed and took a sip off the beer. It was thick and had not been pasteurized. It had little things floating around in it that made me nervous to swallow, but Ivan was slugging his down, so I followed suit. He said, You're becoming a very powerful man, Simon. That is why we wanted you on the board. I hope you know that you had a lot of competition. Indeed, there were other board members who wanted their own sons to take your grandfather's empty chair, but your father Tony beat us to it." I looked around the room at his paintings and replied, "Yeah, I was destined to take my grandfather's seat. Your son will have to wait his turn or wait for me to die, I guess." Ivan said, "Simon, if there's anything that you need, you just let me know. I'm very powerful, and I control many businesses all over the world. Me and you, we will have a strong alliance." And there it was again. The same fake offer that Diego Campos of the Mexican Mafia had just given me. Guys like to start giving you gifts and favors, and then not only do they think you owe them something, but they think they own you. I flared my nostrils at the offer and looked down on him as I took a sip of my beer. I replied, "Yes, sure, likewise." Ivan heard a bell from the other room and said, "Please, finish your drink and come with me. Let's go in the dining room and sit down. If you need to wash your hands, the bathroom is next door down the hall. You're staying for dinner, right? We eat very early in the daytime. It's part of our culture." We entered a nice-sized dining room with a long table that was covered in Eastern European food. The room had more paintings from his art collection on the walls. Ivan's wife caught me looking at the paintings and said, "Our good friend from Greece is a very famous artist. Maybe you've heard of him. He painted all of these for Ivan." I didn't like to talk to the wives of other mobsters as a rule, so I nodded and acknowledged her. Ivan's wife was at the head of the room with her kids in a row next to her. Ivan was at the other end of the table, and I was next to him. Sitting next to me was his oldest daughter, a 17-year-old slut from hell. She had tiny cut-off shorts on and a white tank top with no bra. She was a teenager, but the way she was dressed up with her makeup, she looked like one of Jennifer's adult friends, not a school kid. She stared at me the entire time, drooling, I could tell it bothered Ivan. It bothered me more. We ate a great meal. I got nice and full. With the family in the room, we engaged in conversation about travel and art instead of business. Ivan was a smart man and extremely well-traveled. He was sort of a know-it-all with his brand of game show trivia knowledge. He spoke several languages fluently and knew world history like he was a professor at USC. I can honestly say that Ivan was a pretty fascinating dude. He also had tons of crazy life experiences to talk about. He was a great storyteller, keeping the room on the edge of their seats with all of us waiting for the punchline. He was also one of those sorts of guys who laughed at his own jokes louder than anyone else in the room. His slut daughter kept making advances on me. At one point, she leaned over to grab the salt on the table and grabbed my leg. I slapped her hand away, turning it red, and she felt the sting. Her father finally seemed to notice his daughter's inappropriate antics, and he said angrily in a thick Russian accent, "Cut it out or leave the room." The scolding made the girl cry. She stood up and ran out of the room, down the hall, yelling in Russian, and then slammed her bedroom door as hard as she could. Ivan smiled and said to me, "She's only 17, but she thinks she's 27. She's totally out of control and gets in trouble all the time. We've thought about sending her back to Russia." The wife was chewing her food and said, "Do you have kids, Mr. Castro?" I replied, "Not yet. I just got married not long ago." Ivan quickly interrupted and said, "You don't have them? Well, don't have them. Let me tell you, kids are overrated." His wife gave a gross look to her husband, which made him slink down in his chair, emasculated. He smiled and whispered to me, "Women are all crazy. I hope you found the right one." After dinner, we sat at the table full from our meal, drinking black tea while his family left to their separate rooms to do homework or watch television. His wife went into the kitchen, and we were left alone to chat. Ivan said, "Simon, I think it is wonderful that you have followed in your father's footsteps. Your father, Tony, is a great man. Loyalty to one's family is the only thing that matters in life. Do you agree?" I smiled and replied, "I don't know. It depends. Loyalty is a two-way street. Hey, do you mind if I smoke?" Ivan looked down the hall to see if the coast was clear and then gave me a nod. He said, "Yes, you can. I don't mind, but my wife may smell it and come out here yelling about how it stinks. If she does, all bets are off, and then you're on your own. She scares me much more than you and your muscles do." I laughed and pulled a joint out and lit it up. I also pulled the scented candle on the table closer to me to hopefully mask some of the smell. I replied, "Well, let me ask you something. Will you support the greater good of the Syndicate over its members? Hypothetically speaking, if the situation were to arise." Ivan straightened up in his chair, and his demeanor changed from casual to business. He looked me in the eyes and said, "The board is all about making alliances similar to any brand of politics, but my family is more important to me than the company because they will be with me forever. Members of the board may come and go." I smiled and replied, "I think I got what I came here for. Thanks for the hospitality and the excellent conversation. You're truly an interesting man. I look forward to doing business with you." Ivan said, "Yes, my friend. It was a delight to have you in my home. Next week we will discuss some business at our first meeting." I stood up from my chair, towering over the fat Russian, and walked towards the living room to the entrance. I put my large hand on his shoulder and gave a squeeze. As we reached the door, I looked into Ivan's eyes. I said, "Mr. Brovich, I have a little homework for you until we meet next week. I want you to think long and hard about your seat on the board. I want you to think about your loyalty to the company. Me and you, we'll talk about this topic in the future. I shook his hand firmly and looked deep into his soul, like I was the angel of death. Ivan tried to pull his hand away, but I held him tight in my grip for a long, uncomfortable few seconds. He gave a weak smile, like a bullied child lucky to get away from his aggressor without harm. I let him go and strolled out to the driveway to my car. Raymond pulled up in front of the steps to meet me and jumped out to open my door. I sat in the back of the car, gazing up at Ivan as he stood on his front landing. Raymond looked back at me and said, "I can see those nostrils flared up, kid." I replied, "I don't like the Russians." Thanks for watching.